All right. It's a great day on this. What day is it? September the 9th. If you're watching live, this is your girl, Marcy Thomas, founder of Brown Girl Collective, and I am super excited to be here this evening for a conversation about a book that I enjoyed immensely. And I'm smiling greatly because behind the scenes, Honorée and I were just having some chuckles about some things. So I'm happy to come with you to you today with a lot of joy in my heart and excitement about sharing this great book with you all. So for those of you, this is your first time, my name is Marcy Thomas. I'm the founder of Brown Girl Collective, which has been around for a little over 12 years, and approximately a year and a half ago started the BGC book club because I've always been a lover of great books. You can see some, actually that side, you can see some over there side. So I've got lots of books here. So I love to read, and I wanted to be able to share my love of reading and literature and poetry and all of that that is by Black women with Black women and those who love to read Black women. So today is no exception to that rule. So if you're joining in, please, if you like, drop in the comments, let us know where you're joining from, just so we can get an idea of who is in the room today. And then we're going to go ahead and get started. So I don't believe in holding folks' time, so I'm going to go ahead and start with the introduction of our guests for the evening. This is Honorée Fanonne Jeffers, who is a poet, essayist, and novelist. She's the author of 5 critically acclaimed books of poetry, and her first novel, which we'll be discussing tonight, and her 6th book is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. And as you can see, it's a nice, big, thick, epic read, so there's a lot to talk about in here. Now, this book has been selected as Oprah's current book club pick, and it is also a New York Times, LA Times, and Washington Post bestseller, and getting lots and lots of buzz all across the literary world. In terms of Honorée's poetry, her most recent book of poetry, The Age of Phyllis, actually won the 2021 NAACP Image Award for literary work and poetry. So she is well revered for her writing, and this book is just going to take it to a whole nother level. And when she's not busy writing and doing her essays and things like that, she's also a professor of English at the University of Oklahoma in Norman, where she has taught since 2002. So without any further delay, I'm going to go ahead and bring on the wonderful Honorée Fanonne Jeffers. Welcome.
Thank you. It's good to be here, Sister Marcy.
Yes, and it's an honor to have you here. Definitely an honor. I was already a fan even before, but now that I've had a chance to read your epic novel, I am even more so of a fan. I can't wait to get into it. So,
well, I'm excited. I wore my super intergalactic glasses.
Oh yes, they almost matched that. They matched the book. Actually, now that I'm looking at it,
orange is my favorite color.
All right. Well, that's great. That's great. So, I mean, there's so much to chat about. But before we get into, perhaps sharing some things from the book for those who may not have had a chance to read it, because it hasn't been out that long. So for those who might read a little slower, they may not have had a chance to get into it or complete it yet. But as a poet, what was it that made you decide to actually write a novel?
Well, I've always written little stories from the time that I was little, but of course, that wasn't something I was trying to do professionally. And then when I was in graduate school, I was at a difficult program. I was the only African-American poet in the poetry program, and then there was one African-American fiction writer. But we were lonely, even though we were friends. So I began to write stories to create an imaginary community. Right? I mean, I guess it sounds a little weird, but I guess they were my imaginary friends. So my people are from Putnam County, Georgia. And my mother is from Eatonton, Georgia. She taught Alice Walker.
Okay.
So I began to sort of envision fictional characters from this place, but I called it first Chicasetta. Then I found out there was an actual town named Chicasetta.
Oh wow, okay.
I called it Chicasetta. So anyway, run along. And after I graduated from the Masters of Fine Arts program, I just kept on writing little stories. And I thought, well, maybe I'll put them together and make a little collection. But I never really had like big dreams for my fiction the way that I did poetry, which is kind of ironic, considering, right? I just found out that, this book has sold more than all 5 of my poetry books.
Wow.
In just 2 weeks, right? You just don't never know what the Lord has in store.
That's true.
So I submitted a story to a contest, and I didn't win, but they sent my story to agents, and I got my agent. And when I told my agent, that all I really wanted to do was write short stories, she just kept it real with me. She was like, there's no money in short stories. Right. And so, and she didn't say, and you're not going to be able to keep me. Right? She didn't say that, but I was like, I really like this lady. She had a good vibe, and I run off of vibes. So I lied to her that I was right. And so then maybe about 5 years in, I decided, because I had been sending her little stuff all along, and she was like, this is beautiful. Where's it going? Like all perky, but basically like, you ain't fooling nobody. But she's not Black, but still. So anyway, then I decided, everybody laughs when I say this, but then I decided that I was gonna write a beach read.
Okay.
A beach read.
Yeah. This ain't that.
That's not a beach read. But I decided just to sort of put her off. And then I said, then I'll go back to writing my stories. And so initially it was just going to be about Ailey. And just, coming of age, romance, different things like that, nothing big. And then I started having dreams of a place with a plantation house in the distance. And people would come and they would speak to me in the dreams. And I knew I was in the past. Right. And then I would keep having these dreams, and then sort of, I guess, months into it, I realized when I would wake up, these are Ailey's ancestors. Okay. But I didn't, it never occurred to me to try to put them in her novel.
Gotcha.
Well, maybe at some point I'll write about these people. But then when I began waking up, maybe about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, I can't really remember. I would wake up and then words would come.
Wow.
And it was like a long prose poem, like prose poems to me. And then I realized, like, they wouldn't go away. And then I realized that they were part of the novel.
Gotcha.
That's when things started getting very difficult. That's why it took me 9 years.
Okay. I was wondering how long,
to write the draft that was sold, and then 2 more years for the overhaul.
Oh wow. Okay.
Right. But the novel that I sold was only 450 pages.
Okay, that's interesting.
I wrote way more, and then there were things on the going up here. On the cloud, right? The cloud is like digital, but there were things on the cloud that I had written maybe 3 years before then or whatever, and then I just started. So that's how I did that.
Right. And for those of you who aren't aware, we're going to get into it a little more here and have Honorée share some excerpts from the book. It is a combination of a coming of age story of one young Black girl, Ailey Pearl Garfield, but it's also telling her history as she's coming of age. So it's really kind of two stories in one initially, and then the stories start to meld together. So that's kind of right, and that's why there's so much.
People were going to be mad if they read this whole long thing and there wasn't like, an intersection.
Right.
So people, I mean, I've had people say, I gasped when I, at the end, no spoilers.
Right. No, we never. That's one thing, we never do spoilers on this podcast.
Reviewers, not the big reviewers. The New York Times and the Washington Post, Atlanta Journal-Constitution, they were real good. But there's some other places where they just told a whole book.
Wow.
Just like, seriously.
Right. Because, I mean, the thing is to inspire people to read the book if they have it,
And hopefully, if they are so moved,
buy
the book.
Absolutely.
Right? But why buy the book when you already know what the ending is?
Right. But no, I never do spoilers on here, so don't worry about that.
Marcy, I really do.
But yes, it is definitely, I understood as we were talking about earlier, before we came on the live, is that, you look and you think, wow, this is 790 pages of reading. However, it moves fast. It's very interesting, and because of the way that the story is told, it definitely, you become attached to the characters, not just the lead character, but all of the other characters as well. I mean, there's just so much. And, I know I'll probably go back and look like, okay, now who is it to say? Because it's just so much.
Now you have an advanced copy.
Right.
In the finished copy, there is an extensive family tree.
Right. I heard one of your other interviews, and you mentioned that.
Extensive family tree. It's actually like 3 pages or something like that. And that was my editor's idea, and I'm so glad. Oh, yes, because
that would help kind of keep track. So I will go back and get another copy just for that purpose.
Well, I am so glad. But it's 1, 2, 3 pages.
Okay. Oh yeah, because that definitely, because otherwise it's kind of like, now who was that?
Right.
Where's that person sitting?
All the people.
Right. So for those who don't know, if you don't mind, go ahead and share a little bit of the story, and then we can get into some more of the questions.
Okay. So the novel begins with the land, and the land narrates the songs. And so when we enter this place that is not yet Chicasetta, it's called, it's a village called the Place in the Middle of the Tall Trees. It's a Creek Native American village. And so one day, a young African American man, who is referred to as Negro back then, right? This is the 18th century,
right?
Stumbles into the village. And so this is where that begins. The young man was perhaps 18 or 19 when he appeared next to the tall mound that marked the entrance of the place in the middle of the tall trees. He was barefoot, and his soles were thickened and rough. His gray-colored shirt and pants were wrinkled, and even to those who were standing far away, his garments gave off the smell of mildew, which made sense, because when someone asked him in English how he had arrived at their village, he only told them that he had been walking when he'd arrived at a river. Then he'd found that he was hungry, so he tried to seize a catfish at the edge of the water, but had fallen into the river. He talked with his hands, making wide gestures and animated facial expressions, even more so when he described falling into the river, and the villagers laughed. yet he did not want to offend. He laughed along with them. "Where do you come from?" an elder of the village asked. "Over there." The young man pointed vaguely. He smiled some more. And when the elder asked another question, where was he headed? The young man said he meant to go south. "Truly?" The elder looked back wisely at the rest of his cohort, and the other men hailed this elder's gaze. But when he said that a little man, the size of a child, had pulled him from the river and led him through the woods to the mound at the edge of the village, then the small man suddenly had disappeared. The elder gave his cohort a new surprised look. Now this was a different matter altogether. And so the elder and his cohort clustered, whispering in their own language, while the young man smiled and nodded as if he understood the snatches of words that he was hearing. He did not understand at all. The elders were whispering about what the young man meant when he said that he was headed south. They did this because the young man who had found his way to the village was a Negro. Thus, the elders assumed he was headed to the lands that the Spanish call Florida, and that the young man was looking for certain Seminoles. The people who lived in the middle of the tall trees knew much about the Seminoles because the Seminoles had once been a part of the Creek people before they had broken off to form their own nation. And the Seminoles gave sanctuary to Negroes, taking them into their villages. They mated with Negroes too. And so if this young man with mildew-smelling clothes was seeking the Seminoles, that meant that he was not free. Though slavery wasn't legal yet in this territory, that would come years later, there were ways that the English or Scottish got around the law. And one of those finagling men owned this young Negro, which meant that somebody might come looking for him, and that somebody might try to cause some trouble. Ordinarily, that would mean the people in the place in the middle of the tall trees should take hold of the young man, carry him back east over the Oconee River, and collect a reward from the English or Scottish person who owned him. Yet the young man had mentioned that a very small man had pulled him out of the river. Could this mean the young man had encountered one of the little people? These were supernatural beings, and when they chose to show themselves, it was a very serious matter indeed. The small man would not be happy if this chosen young man was betrayed.
All right. Thanks so much for sharing that. It gives you some insight into how the story begins. And one of the things that I really found powerful about the book, of course, we know it's about an African-American young lady, but however, we know that our history is not just for the time that we came from Africa. We know that we do have, white in our lineage. We know that many of us do have indigenous Americans in our heritage. And I like the fact that you incorporated all of that, especially with it taking place in Georgia, because some people don't know. I actually live in the Atlanta, Georgia area and lived in Savannah, which parts of your story are in that part of the state as well. So some of the places that you named, I was familiar with, and then also understanding that a lot of the names are those Native American names. So I know it was a lot for you to go and get all of that history. So in taking the time to write the book, was that a part of it? And of getting that history, and how important was it for you to not just make it black and white, but also to include the indigenous Americans?
Well, initially when I started having those dreams, it was only historical Black folk. And so I was going to start in the 19th century.
Okay.
And then I began having dreams where people who appeared to be, in terms of their phenotype, Native Americans would come to me in the dream.
Mm-hmm.
They would speak to me, and I would wake up and I would write things down. It was very scary for me because although there are stories in my family, not just stories, family history
Mm-hmm.
about the fact that we have Native American ancestry on both sides, on my mother's side and my father's side.
Mm-hmm.
I did not want to be disrespectful.
Gotcha.
So much has been taken from Native American communities that I didn't want to be that person. But it just wouldn't let go.
Right.
Then I realized that if I was going to tell a story about the land, this land had belonged to the Creek people
Right.
originally. And, it wasn't going to be respectful if I ignored them.
Right.
I went back and forth, and it was very hard.
Mm-hmm.
I literally had a lot of sleepless nights over it.
Okay.
And then the way that I got around it was that there is no major Native American character who is not mixed race.
Okay.
Right?
Got it.
So mixed with white or mixed with black or mixed with all three. And that made me feel comfortable doing that, to tell a mixed story. And then quite recently, one of my colleagues texted me, and she's very well known in Native American studies, and she also has a lot of community ties. And she was like, "Girl, this is beautiful. You channel the ancestors." And I said, "Oh, thank you, Lord." I felt, and actually another colleague who's also a former student of mine, she's a poet as well as a scholar. She's going to be teaching the novel.
Oh, wow. That's good.
Afro-Indigenous graduate seminar. So that makes me feel really good.
Absolutely. And my mother and I were talking about it earlier today, that, she was born and raised in Hinesville, Georgia, which is right outside of Savannah, which is mentioned in the book. And we recently found out that our heritage, or our maternal heritage, traces back to Sierra Leone. However, when my grandmother, my maternal grandmother, was alive, she also mentioned that she's like, there were some Indians in the family. So as I was reading this book, I was like, okay.
A lot of Black folks, particularly in the Southeast, right? We'll talk about that, but we can't prove it.
Right.
Because those 5 Southeastern tribes were removed. And so only if your ancestors were removed out here to Oklahoma, which is where I live now,
right,
can you prove that? Because there was a roll called the Dawes roll that was a census. But there were Native Americans, part white, full blood, and quiet as it's kept, part Black, who hid out. And so, you still have Eastern Band of Cherokees. You still have, you still have non-enrolled. They're referred to as the people who stayed.
Right.
So, but I think that one of the things that I wanted to do was, typically when people who were not reared in Native American communities depict Native Americans, it's always exoticist.
Right.
And I wanted to be very clear that I wasn't doing that.
Right.
There's always this sort of woo-woo thing around the Native Americans, and when you see it in the movies that are made by non-Native people, there's always flutes playing and all of that. So I was really, really careful that I would depict them as the same way, flawed,
Right. Right.
of complex individuals with good inside of them, but maybe not always acting, in particular great ways or whatever. And again, because of the fact that they were all mixed blood, I didn't feel uncomfortable depicting the flaws. I think I felt uncomfortable depicting flawed full-blood Native American, although full-blood is a whole complicated thing.
Right.
I don't really have time to go through all of that.
Right. Exactly. Well, kind of changing the subject a little bit. Now, of course, the title of the book is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. Now, what is it that made you select him in particular, and why love songs?
Well, for those of us African Americans who have attended historically Black colleges and universities, Du Bois looms very large.
Right.
He was very much about African American educational spaces. Okay. Although he is the first African American to earn a doctorate from Harvard University, he was very, very much about we should have our own educational space. Right. So I attended 2 HBCUs, as for people who don't know. Most Black people know HBCUs, but other people don't know that, right? So if there are, non-Black people watching this. So I attended Clark College before it was Clark Atlanta University. And then I transferred to Talladega College. Okay. My mother holds a doctorate from, it was Atlanta University when she graduated. So when I would take English classes, when I took any kind of, political science, whatever, you always had to study W.E.B. Du Bois. Okay. He history, English, social science, political science, etc. And so you couldn't get away from him. Okay. But the other thing about him was he really loved Southern Black people. There was a special place in his heart, even though he was born in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. When he first came down south to Nashville to attend Fisk University, it altered something. It shifted something in him. He talked about being in a room with nothing but Black people, and that they were learning Greek and Latin and all of that. And so his love songs are Ailey's love songs. Ailey, develops, not at first, but develops, no spoilers, a love relationship with Black people, with her Black people as a microcosm, her family, the people of Chicasetta, and then in the larger realm with, African Americans. So that was one of the songs. But there is a particular epigraph that begins the book that talks about the sorrow songs, which are the traditional, what I'm in my 50s, what we used to call the traditional Negro spirituals. Right. So when I began to think about these interludes, that the language was totally different than the contemporary, and they were sort of song-like. They were mood pieces. I thought of his sorrow songs, and I thought, at first they were supposed to be interlude. And then I thought, why not just call them songs? And then the last thing is, this book is a love song to Black women.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is. And, one of the things in my notes, one of the things I wrote about it is that I like the fact that the story, yes, it's about a particular family, and let me look for my specific note, but it also dives into, it's Ailey's personal history, but it's her family history. It's the communal, because the community of which she's brought up in, and then it does branch out further to how it impacts Black people just as, as a whole. So I definitely could see that within the story that, in learning who she was able to learn more and have a greater understanding of the people and the people that are part of the community around her. And in a lot of ways, I'll be honest, I related to her because one of the things about Brown Girl Collective is that over the last years, I have spent a lot of time researching and finding out and sharing information about powerful Black women. And I have found that even through my own process, it has changed my mindset about certain things.
Yes.
It's given me an understanding about certain things, just in, and understanding our power and, our ability, and the fact that we may have obstacles in our lives that once we overcome said obstacles and step into our greatness, that there's really nothing that we can't do.
There's nothing that Black cannot do. And in particular, as a deep brown skinned woman myself, as a cocoa brown woman, and who is the daughter of a chocolate brown woman, this is in particular a love song to those Black women who are ignored in the media. When we look at commercials, 85-90% of them are of ethnically indeterminate Black women with straight hair or different things like that. And I wanted, this is overtly, when I was on CBS this morning, I said, this is a love song to dark-skinned Black women, because these are the women, beautiful, rich, colored, that came across the water. These are the women who kept this community going.
Absolutely.
And I needed to, in my first novel, hopefully if God says the same, I'll have at least, one or two more. But in my first novel, I needed to lay it all out there.
Right.
It was for us, and that it was unabashedly for us. Of course, I would love for everyone to read the book, but it is for us, and I'm not going to try to pretend that it's not for us.
Right. And I would definitely suggest, I read it relatively quickly because that's just what I do. But, I would encourage people to, to not shy away because it's 790 pages. I mean, it's well worth it because, in it, like I said, you're learning about this family. You're learning about, of course, there are things that are fictionalized because it is a work of fiction. However, there is a lot of, real things that happened in history. So you learn a lot. And for me, it inspires me, as I mentioned, there's some things I know about my personal family history, but it's inspiring me to think, I need to go back and dig a little deeper.
Oh, yeah.
And there are some things that I could learn.
Is your friend.
Right.
Ancestry.com will, now, one of the things is that for very many of us, we can't go beyond the 1870 census. But if for example, if your people were enslaved, right? And if you're African American, typically your people were enslaved, right? Unless you're, from West Africa more recently. So, but what will happen is if you find out where your people were, then you can begin to look at records of slave masters, and then you can find other things. But for me, it was about filling in those gaps that, it was very important for me to do that. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Well, there are so many different things that the story talks about. It does talk about, education and being educated at a place where the people look like you versus being educated in spaces where they don't. And you mentioned that you went to a school where you were kind of with one other person that looked like you, and trying to find your way, and the microaggressions and the real aggressions.
Oh, the microaggressions and the real aggressions. Yes. And I'm in academia now.
Yes.
So I know all about those, and that's all I'll say. Yeah. And I wanted us to, and by us, Black people, to recognize moments.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't want it to be hackneyed so that, like a soap opera, but I wanted us to be able to sort of recognize these moments. There were some early readers, not my literary agent, who is just like ride or die. I always say she's like, we down 4 flat tires. We've been 2005, and I just started making her real money, right?
Okay.
And then, my editor, Aaron Wicks, I always say Aaron Wicks is a genius and the world needs to know. But there were some earlier folks who had read the novel, and they were like, I don't really understand why we need this whole college thing, right? And I remember, I was kind of confused by that, because when you read like Jeffrey Eugenides's The Marriage Plot, there are plenty of college scenes.
Mm-hmm.
So, so I think that was, I think that what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to present, and I do this in my poetry too, present worlds where Black people see themselves, okay? And then we see ourselves writ large in the American story. As the great Toni Morrison, of course, I'm not trying to compare myself to Toni Morrison, but as the great, because she was a genius in the world, and we were blessed to be, walking the same earth as her. But as she talked about, is that the African-American experience is not regional, it's not marginal,
right?
It's American experience. Right. But I also I think every generation or so, you have to remind readers, right? People are used to it with Toni Morrison, but I think that it's difficult. I think Tayari Jones does that work, and other people, but it's difficult for non-Black readers to imagine a world that does not surround them.
Right, that's true.
That we're constant, that we think about them all the time. We don't. We have our own lives, our own communities. And so I wanted people to really see. And I have been very pleasantly surprised that non-Black readers are like, wow, this is great. I never saw a world like this before. Because you do get a little scared. But I remember when Toni Morrison talked about she wanted to write books for Black people.
Absolutely.
And she also did not want to always be considering white readers when she wrote. So that's what I wanted to do.
And you absolutely did that. And, I know that people are comparing you to Toni Morrison. I know that that's happening, because it is epic and it is lyrical and all of those things.
Makes me a little uncomfortable.
Yeah, I know it does. I know it does.
I mean, people thinking that this is my book. I don't want people to think that I'm like, ooh, mic drop. Or whatever,
Yes, so I say not the next Toni Morrison, but the first Honorée Jeffers. How about that?
Thank you.
The one and only. Honorée Jeffers. How about that? But one of the things that, I also like, of course, you were talking about, well, a couple of things, what you were just saying, think about telling Black stories, but then also telling the truth of things that happened historically, because it wasn't pretty.
No,
And and talking about it and not trying to use my pun, whitewash things that are true, because we know right now we're dealing with a lot of things just in this country about trying to do away with critical race theory, all these things. Like, people don't want the truth to be told. But I, even in the pieces and parts of it where it was very graphic and upsetting, it's important to know the truth of the things that happened.
And I also think that the promise that I make my readers is that you travel through some of these places and they are painful, but there is going to be joy at the end of these places.
Right.
And that's what I would never take people through this, right? Because there's joy in our being here. You know, as the great Dr. Maya Angelou said, I am the dream and the hope of the slave. Right. We are here. We don't just survive. Many of us thrive. Okay. And so we are the wildest dreams. Someone, I forget who I'm quoting, that, of our enslaved ancestors. But the other thing that I want many people, when they say I'm tired of reading about slavery, there are two things. You never hear people from Jewish communities, and I'm saying this in a very delicate manner because I do not want people thinking I'm criticizing Jewish American communities. I'm actually complimenting them.
Right.
You never hear them say, I'm tired of hearing about the Holocaust.
Right.
There is never a moment where they say, let's just stop talking about that. Okay. There are movies made, there are books made, there are all of that, because they know that if you do not maintain this history in 10 to 15 years, people will be like, we don't even, what? 6 million? What? No. There are Holocaust deniers right now. Okay. Grown people who are old enough to know better. Okay. So that's number one. Every community needs to, this is the same thing with Native Americans. You never hear them say, I'm tired of talking about the Trail of Tears.
Right.
Okay? That is never going to happen. They are constantly, tending those ancestral altars, because what we know is that there were boarding schools in this country that were designed to strip Native American children of their language, of their culture, of their history. So you have to maintain this if you want your descendants to know this. Right. So that's number one. Number two, it is completely ridiculous for people to say they don't want to read about slavery. I can hear them saying it's painful. That, yeah, it's painful. But if you want a reparations check for what somebody in the past went through, how you gonna say you don't want to hear their story? Shut up. I hear you talking, give me my money. Like, that's so disrespectful and mean. And, and again, we need to be tending these altars, because you will get people talking about slavery wasn't so bad, blah, 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 blah. I just saw a comment and I didn't say anything because I don't fight with people on social media.
Right.
Okay? And even less so now.
Right.
Okay? Because I'm a representative, at least for this month, of the Oprah Book Club. So the last thing I need to do is be breaking fool.
Like, next month might be a different story.
Next month, maybe. Okay. But this lady, non-Black lady, said, when Black men are not in the household, and this is because of slavery. And I'm thinking, there are all kinds of studies that show that Black men are the most engaged fathers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So again, you will get people just sort of eroding the truth. I don't even think she meant any harm.
Right.
She had heard someone say that.
Right.
And she thought she was being nice saying that. But what people don't understand is when families were split up
Mm-hmm.
in the aftermath of the Civil War, you had people going from town to town to town to try to find their relatives,
Absolutely.
putting ads in the newspapers saying, please know I still love you, right? And all of these. So we need to understand that even in the midst of this sorrow, we had love.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, we had love. They had love
Mm-hmm.
always for their children, for their family, for their community. We still have that love. And so, I wanted to tell a truthful story. It's
Right.
a hard story, but the thing is that this is no spoiler. It's obvious.
Right.
At the end of the first chapter, there's a litany of family.
Mm-hmm.
What you find out is that the people who have been enslaved on this piece of land, they are still there on that
Right.
piece of
Yep.
land. And
Mhm.
there is joy in that, in
Mhm.
that maintaining that community. And that's what I wanted. Sometimes, Sister Marcy, there are times where things happen, and like right now, my house is just a hot mess. I mean, it's so bad. I'm shamed because I'm tired. I'm in the middle. I've been
So
working.
you have a lot going on.
A lot going on. However, I was planning on having a housekeeping service, and then the next wave of the pandemic happened, and they refused to wear masks out here. So I'm not just trying to have COVID, all in my house, whatever, right? But so I'm always saying, you didn't do this, you didn't do this, you didn't do this. And the other day I said, I want you to make a list of what you have done to give you credit. And so I think that we African Americans, many times, while we're busy being so embarrassed about slavery, because, we've been trained that the victors are the ones who won.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? But see, we have the moral victory.
That's right.
We have the moral victory. So the survivors always have the moral victory. And so I think that maybe we need to be making a list about what it was. Okay, yes, we were enslaved, but we learned how to grow our own food.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. There are still Black farmers. There are still people. My niece now, she has that thing in our family where it's almost like she can grow plants from her tips, right? That is going straight across the water.
Right.
Right. So.
And thinking about the recipes, because even in the book, some of the things you talked about that they were cooking and, and passing those recipes along and, all that sort of thing. Because that's something that I regret. My mom and I have talked about that we regret that some of my grandmother's recipes, we didn't really get them at the time. And now she's gone. And
there's some in our family that we don't have.
Right. So, I mean, the things that you lose along the way, but it's just important if it's possible while there are people that you can hold on to those things. I know we're trying to eat healthier and all that stuff.
We're all trying to eat healthier, but
but there are certain things.
Certain things. Let me tell you something, Sister Marcy. Every once in a while, I'll get a craving for grits.
Okay.
Right. I don't need a lot of grains.
Right.
I don't, because I have like digestive issues or whatever. But some, maybe about once or twice a year, I wake up and I have a craving for grits.
Okay.
And I make them, vegan. Even though I eat meat every once in a while, I go back and forth. I'm on my vegan thing now. And then, maybe in 2 or 3 months, I'll go back to fish. And as soon as I put those grits in my mouth, I think about the people of old, right? Grits goes all
right
way back.
Right.
Way back. So there are things, foodways. There's a really lovely documentary on Netflix, High on the Hog.
High on the Hog, right. I've seen it.
Yeah, foodways. Even some of the little superstitions. Like, I don't let a lot of people in my hair. Because my grandma would be like, you don't want somebody working roots on you.
Exactly.
Right. So there are all these sort of things. And then I am a dreamer. And that is straight from, I remember something happened. I won't say what it was. When I was a teenager. And the next day, the day after the morning, my mother walked up to me and she said, "Is there something you want to say to me?" And my sister came up to me, my late sister, and she said, "Mama had a dream." Right. And that goes, those sort of things. So I think that once we begin to tend to that history, but you have to be able to not look away from it.
Right. And I mean, there's so much richness within that, so, and as I was saying, just for myself, learning certain things, understanding certain things, it inspires me. I mean, even to do what I'm doing, talking to you right now,
This is so important.
Yes.
The literacy, you are, if I may, go into my little teacher bag.
Okay.
The literacy community that you were establishing here, that goes all the way back to the 19th century. So, I mean, Black Bookstagram, I think that we think that's new because it's technological, but that goes all the way back to those Negro Club women's movements. Right? And so through social media, even though it's a different medium, that is a maintaining of age old, So I just think I love these things, these Black women's reading groups, Black people's reading groups, because, as the great Frederick Douglass said, once you learn to read, you will forever be free.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things for me as well, because we know that for many years, people, they didn't want us to read. So now, and a lot of people say, if you want to hide something from a Black person, put it in a book, all these things.
Not me. I go, the first thing I do, I'm like, it's got to be some money up in here somewhere.
Exactly. Well, we have a comment coming from the UK. Okay. Blessed love from the UK. I am being bathed in the voices and songs of my sisters. Such a joy to be in the sacred Black feminine space. Yes, giving thanks to the ancestors for you both. You're welcome, sister.
Thank you so much, Sister
Yes,
Rose.
Sister Rose, and thank you for joining us from the UK. I know it's got to be late there,
and it's late there. It's late. Stayed up for
God bless you. God bless you. And for those who may watch later, thank you so much for taking the time. And I think that this is a worthy conversation. And there are so many themes in the book that we didn't even get a chance to touch on because it's such a powerful, epic book. But I just consider it an honor to have you here and to be able to talk to you. So one of the things that I oftentimes ask, and because there may be other budding writers in the room,
Mm-hmm.
So, what things may you like to share? Actually, I think the last author that I talked to as well had spent many years getting to the point of her book and things like that. So, what type of inspiration or advice, for lack of a better word, would you share with those who have a desire to write and to put their stories out into the world?
I think the first thing I would say is to read. Okay. I think a lot of people think, okay, well, that's going to get in the way of my own thoughts or whatever. But, that's how I became a writer. I think if you're a writer, you're always going to write.
Mm-hmm.
There's just a difference between, do you want to do something with your writing? Do you want to keep it in a book? Both of those choices are valid.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, people need to keep that in mind, right? So I would read. I would look at who are the favorite authors who are doing with their work what I would one day want to do, with my work, right? Although I worship Toni Morrison, I never learned much about craft.
Okay.
Toni Morrison. What I learned was how to be courageous in my ideas about race and all of that, because she took no prisoners. Okay.
Right.
So, but in terms of, for example, Zora Neale Hurston does, she really does language well and in a folkloric context. So the first thing I would say is read. The second thing I would say is come up with a practice that you can stick with.
Okay.
These sound like very simple things, but writing is not something that you can leave for a month, 2 months, 3 months, and then come back and think that it's just going to be, flowing for you, right? It's like a marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. If you leave your mate, for 2 or 3 months, you don't call, you ain't texting, y'all ain't FaceTiming, you ain't sending little naughty, messages or whatever. And then you just show up and be like, hey, baby. Right. And it's going to be like, get off of me. And that's what your writing is going to do. So I would say, if you're a nighttime person, then write at night. I used to be a nighttime person. Then once I got older, I found that, now every once in a while, my dreams still wake me up. I tend to wake in the morning.
Okay.
And I give the best of my day, because writing is like prayer for me, particularly poetry.
Okay.
It's like prayer for me. So I give the best of my morning when I can.
Right.
But you may give nighttime or whatever, but you need to have a practice.
Right.
And you need to keep that practice, unless you have a little baby or something like that. Some women I know, and of course I don't have my own children, so I'm sure it's much harder than I'm, saying, but some women I know, they breastfeed while they write.
Wow.
But you need to be sure that you become faithful to that. The third thing is, try not to involve yourself with anyone who doesn't respect your art.
Woo!
It just is.
Yes.
Your art is you.
Mm-hmm.
So, you wouldn't want somebody sitting up calling you ugly or diminishing you or making fun of how much you weigh or whatever. And you don't want anyone who doesn't respect, because this is in your spirit.
Right.
So.
And I would say that goes for any creative venture, really. Any creative venture.
Whatever. You need to have people around you who really believe in you, because it may take you. The one thing that I can say is that, being an older person, right? It took me 24 years to become an overnight sensation. Okay. But I had people who were ribbing me up. the whole way. You're great. You're fantastic. It's gonna happen for you. Da, 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 and that's what you need.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Hey, and I'm not ashamed to say I am, what's today? I am 17 days away from turning 55. So yes, I'm ready.
Oh, you. But you notice I'm sitting up in here talking about, I'm older than you, right?
Yeah, people are like, what?
I always say that for Black women, is reparations for slavery.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I always say that.
Absolutely. So yes, I can concur with you on that. That there are things that kind of alluding to what I was saying earlier. Things that I didn't know or I didn't have an understanding of or grasp of at a certain age. But now that I've gotten older, even talking to people and doing some of the things I'm doing now, it's been going back to ideas I had as a young person, a younger person, as a child, or whatever. So it's like it's not, as long as you got breath in your body, it's never too late, to keep
I think
on.
Also, this pandemic has really lit a fire under over 45 women. I have seen something really phenomenal. Now, I call it pandemic YOLO.
Right.
Song, you only live once. And I've seen people, they're like, this is it. You never know the hour of the day. I'm going to get it going. And so there's something happening. And I want to be, a model for women to understand, what? You're right. Like you said, Sister Mercy, as long as you have breath in your body.
Right.
You never know when the time is going to be, but it's going to be right on time for you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Paula. Paula says I wear my age very well. Thank you.
Really good.
I try. Really she also had an earlier comment thanking us for our discussion, and she says she loves your glasses. I think we all love those glasses.
This is the first time I've worn them.
Oh, those are perfect, especially since they match the book. So we're almost at time. Well, we are at time, but just a couple more minutes. I know that you are on the circuit of getting out there and talking about your book and all of that right now. When's the Oprah Book Club event? On the 22nd, I think?
24th.
24th. I knew it was coming up.
But there are, if you're on Instagram, I'm on Instagram, there are constant daily posts. Today they had a whole layout of family pictures.
Right, I did see that.
So my mom, Dr. Jeffers, who was one of my professors at Talladega College.
Oh, wow.
And Congresswoman Williams from Georgia. She was taught by my mother. She graduated from Talladega. We're very proud of her. And so there are those, and there are little thematic things that are coming. So it's always fun. There's a lot of, and I try to engage with people because, I'm happy that people are reading the book, and and I just, I like the people. I did this for the people.
Right.
So.
And we have been scrolling your socials at the bottom. So for those who hopefully you've picked up on that, her Facebook at Honorée J, Instagram Honorée_Jeffers, Twitter at Black Library Girl. Well, you see how it's spelled out. And then the website. So those are just places for you to keep up with Honorée and everything that she's got going on. And I'm not going to ask you what's next because you gotta, you're working on this.
I am working on 2 new books now.
But okay. Yeah. All right. So yes, there will be more to come. Okay, Angie Short is saying such a wonderful book. She can't put it down. And yes, I would agree. Because I was telling you earlier, I read it in basically a couple of days. So yes, once you get into it. I saw on Twitter when I tweeted out about this event earlier, someone was saying, I couldn't sleep last night because I kept picking it back up. I was supposed to be sleeping.
I'm just like licking that up like cream.
Right. So definitely, I'm going to put the name of the book up again for those who may not have caught that. So, yes. So the book is The Love Songs of W.E.B. Du Bois. So, just in terms of what is coming next, actually, I have another book club event coming up on Monday. Normally, it's not that quick, but just timeline wise, because I have some other things going on later in the month. Our next book is going to be on Monday. I'll be talking to Sugary Said Sal. Sorry, trying to hold it right. Who is the author of The Last Nomad? Get down in the right place. The Last Nomad, Coming of Age in the Somali Desert. So I'll be talking to her on Monday about, this is her memoir. So we'll be talking about
yes,
her.
I heard about that one. That's
right. Right, so that's Monday. And then next month, the book of the month for next month is trying to get the right thing up here. Give me 1 second. Got all these different screens.
Is this Call Baby?
Yeah, for some reason I'm not seeing it. But yeah.
Bottom. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, there it is. Yeah, Call Baby, which will be on October the 4th. So, get ready for that. And I will put up more formal things for people to know. So I'm always working on getting new authors to come on. So if you're new to the BGC Book Club, just stay tuned for all the wonderful things that we have going on. And I look forward, actually, Honorée, I would love to have you come back, not just with other books that you're working on, but even to do some poetry, because we've had some ladies come on and do their poetry.
Lovely.
So yes, I love all types of literary work. So I would love to have you come on and do that for us at another time. So when things slow down a little bit for you, 'cause I know you're a busy lady right now.
Just a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit. So, well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to this awesome conversation. Please, if you enjoyed it, share it out with others. Let people know. For those who maybe not have caught the live and catch the replay, please, let folks know about the conversation. Make sure you tell people about the book, and just enjoy all the love and heart and soul that Honorée put into this book for us. So we thank you. We appreciate you. We honor you. And everyone, you have a great evening. Thank you so much. Honorée, hold on 1 second. I'm going to let them go, but I just want to holler at you 1 second.
Okay.
All right, Pamela. We'll look to see you the next time. Okay.